Tam bude just because, protože oni tím, když řeknete, to, že jsi vystudoval výšku, ještě neznamená, že máš rozum. Tak oni vlastně říkají, jenom proto, že vystudoval, ještě neznamená, že. Takže tady byste tím pádem řekli, to, že měl kšiltovku a v ruce kufr, just because he was wearing a baseball hat and carrying a suitcase, to je ono. Jo, rozlišovat wear je oblečení, carry je v ruce, že něco nesete. So he was wearing a baseball hat and carrying a suitcase doesn't mean blah, blah, blah. All right. Excellent. Excellent. What's Nantucket? An island. How big of an island is it? It's small. How many people are there? What's the population of Nantucket? Just roughly. A few thousand. About 10,000 people. Where is it? In America. Okay, let's narrow it down a little. It's just off the coast of Massachusetts, which is right over here. It's a small island. I think it's quite famous in the United States because for a few reasons. Reason number one is it used to be a whaling place where the whaling, the ships that hunted whales in the 19th century, they used to anchor at Nantucket. It was, and there were a lot of widows because a lot of the guys who went whaling never came back because 19th century, right? So that is gone because we don't need whales anymore. Also, there aren't any. So that's over. Reason number one, that was reason number one. Reason number two is it has a very poetic name, I guess, Nantucket. I mean, it rhymes with fuck it. That's another reason, but it is a poetic name, and that's pretty much it, I think. Well, it's close to. You guys can't see it, but there are a few interesting places nearby. There's a place called Martha's Vineyard, which is a place where American presidents have their summer houses. It's pretty famous. And a couple of other places that are kind of Cape Cod, I think, is close there. Well, it doesn't matter. So Nantucket has had a lot of scientists coming over lately because they figured that this is a good place to do what? To run experiments, that have to do with genetics. Why is Nantucket a good place to run an experiment on genetics? Deer and mice, right? And these deer and mice host ticks, right? And the ticks carry Lyme disease. And Lyme disease is a disease that's kind of annoying, right? Can it kill people? I mean, it can. It can, rarely. It happens very rarely, but it does happen. And it is very annoying. How do you know that you have a tick? You can feel. Can you? Probably. Yeah, you can feel it a little. And also, when you look at your hand or wherever you have it, you see a rash, right? A rash is a little red spot on your skin. And then you have to get rid of the tick, which everyone does differently. And most people do it in a very, wrong, right? Like I do it wrong. So there's Nantucket has a very high infection rate for Lyme disease. So a lot of people have had or will have Lyme disease. And so scientists were like, okay, it's an island, right? So an island is a good place to run experiments because it's isolated, right? And you have it under control. And so the scientists were like, all right, so what we're going to do is we're going to change or rewrite every tick's DNA. Is that what they decided to do? No, because there's too many ticks. And the ticks are not the hosts because the deer and the mice are the hosts. So they decided to rewrite all the mice DNA. Now, in order to do that, you need to be able to do two things. What are those? Modify the DNA, exactly, which we now can do thanks to CRISPR, this new method, right? Is this the first gene editing method that humans have come up with? Is it the first method to change the DNA that we have had? No, it isn't. We've had some techniques before, but CRISPR is much cheaper, effective, precise, and powerful. So it's basically like sitting at a computer and changing the DNA there, and it's really cheap, really easy to do, super easy to do. So that's step number one. We've got that covered. And then there's step number two. You have to make sure that the changes don't disappear, right, after a few generations. You have to make sure that the changes get passed on to the next generation, right? Because if you don't ensure that, then each baby only has, a 50-50 chance of having that, and sooner or later, the changes will disappear. So can we do that? And we use a thing called the selfish gene, right? The selfish gene. So there's a gene that ensures that it gets passed on always. So if you attach the changes to this gene somehow, I have no idea how this works, technically, but you can do that, apparently. And so what you do is you do this, you change the DNA, you attach the changes to this selfish gene, and then you just sit and you make coffee and you twiddle your thumbs and you just wait. And these species, like mice or mosquitoes, they reproduce really quickly, right? So within a few generations, this change will appear in every mouse on Nantucket. So you just wait. I don't know how long it takes. Years, maybe months, maybe years. But pretty soon, the changes will be evident. And so